Hello, welcome. This is Journey to Positive Choices. Today I have Nicole, my daughter, back on with me, and welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.
Just to kind of bring everybody up to speed, because it's been a few months since you and I got back together, because we talked about Ezra, and then the last podcast we were talking about Esther and how she saved her people, and it ended with her saving all of her people. Well, now we're going to go back over into Ezra, into chapter 5, because where we left off with all this is the Jewish people had started rebuilding the temple. Things went south. They made them stop building. In comes Esther, because they were going to kill all the Jewish people. And God used Esther, and she stood up for her people and saved the Jewish people. And this is going on in Persia, and the temple's being rebuilt over in Jerusalem. Well, all of that happened in Persia comes back to Jerusalem with the Jewish people, and now they are going to resume the building of the temple.
Yes.
So we're going to start off in Ezra in chapter 5, and it kind of surrounds two prophets, Haggai and Zechariah, because they're the ones that are helping lead the Jewish people to build the temple.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of serve, like, as a prophet, God's hand is over them. So they serve as a vital link between God and his people.
Right. Well, we're going to have to throw another little side in there, a little sidetrack. The governor of that area, and I think you say his name as Tatnai.
Sounds right.
He was the governor over that area, and he sees that they start rebuilding the temple, and he writes a letter to King Darius explaining to him what all's going on, and that the people are telling him that God has directed them to build the temple.
Yes. And I think it's important to note here, there's a but God moment mentioned in verse 5, and it says, "But the eye of their God was watching over the elders of the Jews, and they were not stopped until a report could go to Darius, and his written reply be received." So I think if
they kept working.
Yeah, and if God's telling you to do something, you keep doing it, because his hand is going to be over you. Don't stop. Don't give in to the enemy.
Well, and yes, and relate just that verse into today's time. God asks us to do a lot of things that probably are not popular.
Right.
But if we realize that God's hand is on us, that we should go ahead, even though people are saying, "Oh, don't do that, don't do that." God is saying, "No, you need to do that."
Yeah, and just like the Jewish people in their letter to King Darius, who they were making their appeal to, they proclaimed it. They said, "We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and we are rebuilding the temple." I mean, I just feel like they're proclaiming it, like, nothing's gonna stop me, because this was my God-given right and purpose.
And that's exciting. I mean, if you really think about it, I wish that we as Christians today would get just an inkling of the God that they had in their lives. I wish we had that, because it didn't matter. They were going to serve God regardless. People are saying, "Stop, do this, do that," and they're saying, "No, our God said do it, and we're doing it." So, And then Darius actually, he does some looking into it and digs into the scrolls and things like that, and he finds a letter that was it King A that had written this? Anyway, saying that the temple is King Cyrus. The temple is to be rebuilt for God, because God is real and God's people are to build that temple. Now we're into Ezra 6.
Yeah, and so interesting here, like at the end of his letter back to them, he said, I, Darius, have decreed it. Let it be carried out with diligence. And so the word diligence means careful and persistent work or effort. So on top of that, Darius provided all the supplies that they needed.
I know, and I thought that was very interesting that not only did God say, okay, we're gonna continue building this. Well, he also told them, you don't have to worry about anything. It's gonna be given to you. And Darius, I mean, it was bulls, rams, lambs, for burnt offerings. It was olive oil, wheat, salt, wine, materials, gold, silver, anything they needed, they were given to help build this temple back.
Yeah, so not only were they able to finish building, like they prospered in doing it. So just when you see opposition come up when you're doing the work of God, like, because you will, and if you're not seeing opposition, you may want to question if you're truly doing the work of God. But God's going to find a way to provide for you. Not only will he find a way to provide, he will go a step further and bless you in that. It will be prosperous.
And, you know, that's things that we're trying to kind of lead people into today, that no matter what struggles you have, no matter how hard it is on your life, let God have it. And rely on him, and he will provide for you. I promise. He will provide, and that's just hard for a lot of people to understand. I mean, for the Jewish people back then, it was very hard because they didn't know where they were going to get all this stuff.
Well, I'm sure at this time they had opposition, and they're thinking, God, you told me to do this, and now I have to stop doing what you told me to do. Like, what's going on? What are you doing? It's very questionable. And I think this is where Ezra comes in. When her people start coming back.
Because toward the end of chapter 6, the temple's completed, and it was during the 6th year of the reign of King Darius that it was completed. And they did a big dedication of the temple, and everything that they needed for the dedication, as far as sacrifices, as far as food, as far as beverages.
The sin offering for all of God's people.
It was all provided. God took care of that, and then they celebrated Passover. Well, now in chapter 7 is when Ezra arrives back in Jerusalem. It says many years later, and it was during the reign of King A, or Artaxerxes. Isn't that how you say it?
Yes.
So I'm just gonna call him King A because it's a lot easier. He wrote a letter to Ezra to the people. And do you remember what all it was? It was just talking about how God is blessing the Jewish people, actually.
Yeah, and part of the decree, he said, you can bring any Jews with you, Ezra, to go back to Judah and Jerusalem in regard to the law of God. And so it's interesting to think about the Jews that were freed from Persia. Could they have been part of the Jews that went back with Ezra? So while God was working, you think God stopped working when the temple had to stop being rebuilt, but he was actually working through Esther to get her people freed so he could bring them back down.
That's right. And Ezra was away from Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And God and King A had given him permission to bring the priest and the Levites and everybody back with him to Jerusalem. So God is setting up his return of the kingdom of Jerusalem, if you want to say it that way. And things are starting to come together. The temple is built, and now the people are starting to come back in.
Yeah, and so Ezra too, he was a descendant of Aaron, who was the chief priest. So Ezra already had God's anointing on him to lead these people. So this is just another example of how God's fulfilling his covenant. If we look back in Exodus, in chapter 40, verse 15, it says, their anointing will be to a priesthood that will continue for all generations to come. I mean, and then we could even take it a step further. I mean, we see Jesus all over this. Like, ultimately, Jesus is going to be our priest. That's who's going to intercede on behalf of us for our sins to God the Father.
Well, and we're fixing to get into some other things, but when you talk about the people coming back, there was a lot of these people were in Babylon, and I mean, it was just families of descendants of Abraham, God. I mean, there's a whole lineage of people that are following Ezra back to Jerusalem. It wasn't an easy journey. There's a lot of miles that they're going through, and a lot of deserts, and a lot of I'm trying to figure out how to say it. A lot of interracial things that were going on. All these different tribes kind of started coming together because they were traveling across all these different countries.
Right, and then and you have like the shortage of Jewish women.
Right.
They were still trying to make their way back, and so the ones who are already there rebuilding, they intermarried.
They did,
which went against what they were supposed to do. God told them not to.
God told them to wait. We're rebuilding. I'm going to bring my people back. Well, they didn't, and there's a lot of things that took place, and I even think that probably on the trip back, because they were going through so many different countries and different tribes. It says in Ezra 9, it says, many of the people of Israel and even some of the priests and Levites that were traveling with Esther, they have not kept themselves separate from the other peoples living in the land. So as they're traveling, they're intermarriage or mixing with different people, and they've taken up practices of different religions. Is how I would say it. And let's just talk about that a minute. Ezra's about the concerns of intermarriage.
Well, and this was something I'm like, at first I was thinking, well, why is it such a big deal for them to intermarry? But it turns out So God had warned them, do not intermarry. And Malachi, another prophet, he prophesied about the same time as Ezra's mission, and he indicated that some Jews had broken their marriages to marry daughters of a foreign god. So they were intermarrying with people from Egypt, and there the Jews who married pagan spouses expressed their devotion to pagan gods in addition to the Lord. So God was warning them to not intermarry because he knew that they were going to end up sinning and they were going to fall into deception.
Right.
So it wasn't like, do not marry and show love to somebody different than you. It was, do not marry because I'm trying, or do not intermarry because I'm trying to protect you.
And God had a whole purpose for this. Mm-hmm. Because he knew that he was going to bring his people back.
Right. So they needed to just wait.
As he tells a lot of people, just wait. But, I mean, in the end, you know, God takes care of things. And, I mean, there's a lot of hard lessons that these people had to learn, including some of the people that were traveling with Ezra. And, I mean, it's a hard lesson even for us to learn a lot of these times. You know, and because I have a lot of people that are like, what about this intermarriage thing? I'm like, well, you need to explain that to me. I said, to me, intermarriage has got to do with your religious beliefs. You know, if you're a Christian and you marry an atheist, it probably is not going to work out.
It can.
It can.
It can. God can restore that marriage.
But if God says no, you need to listen to what God says.
Right, because ultimately, each individual has that choice to make.
They do, and that's the hardest part about all of this for me when I was reading about it was obeying what God was saying. That was the whole purpose of what God was doing. He was like, we're rebuilding my holy temple. We're bringing our people back. And there's a purpose in everything that I've told you to believe in and to follow me in. And if you didn't, then it's going to be hard on you.
You're going to fall victim to sin.
Right.
But
here's that God, that but moment.
Yes. So, the people confessed their sins.
They did.
I mean, Ezra found out about this. He was
Tore his
clothes.
Ripped his beard.
Ripped his beard out. But the people saw that. They too wept bitterly because they realized what had happened. They saw God bringing the people back and they're like, oh my goodness, I messed up. And how many times do we do that? We see that. We go back to God, like, oh, this is why you told me to do this. I get it now.
Yeah.
Because I'm not capable of making that decision on my own. I'm going to want to do things the fast way, the quick way, what seems most convenient to me. And God's usually saying, wait, no, I have something even better coming.
And that's the hard thing for everybody to understand. And you know, through Ezra, I mean, some of it was, when I was reading it, I was like, wow, you know, that's...
Yeah, they sent these women and children away.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you're like, why would you send women and children away? But it's because they didn't worship the same God.
That's right.
and they weren't going to change, and they were only going to defile God's people more.
Well, instead of, I think the way I was reading it, instead of it helping them understand the religion, it was totally confusing them, the situation that they were in.
Yes.
And so they sent them away, and I think that was for a purpose, so that God at another time could work on those people. That's my interpretation, Doug McWhorter. But because God works that way, all right? I mean, there are some times that there's some hard knock things that we have to do, but there's always a purpose in that. You know, the temple was rebuilt for a purpose. He's bringing his people back to Jerusalem for a purpose.
Yes.
That purpose, and today is April the 18th. And today, that purpose went to the cross.
Yes. And I think a lot of people, well, I'm not going to say I think, but I heard a quote recently, and they have a misconception about freedom. You know, freedom isn't being able to do what you want to do. It's freedom means doing what you're able to do for what you were created to do, for your purpose. So God's purpose for you is you having the freedom to do that.
Right. And Jesus Christ paid the ultimate price so that we could do that through salvation through him, and that it gives us true purpose. And I mean, I keep using that word, but I mean, if you look at everything that went on in Ezra and with Esther and all that, you know, everything in the Old Testament is leading up to the coming Messiah.
Yes, the ultimate priest.
That's right. And intermarriages or interreligious marriages, whatever you want to call it, I mean, there was a purpose in everything that went on. And I think what I would like to do is, because we ended the book of Ezra, and we're fixing to go into Nehemiah, but Nicole, I truly think that with the Easter weekend coming up and us talking about this and talking about the temple and the importance of listening and following God, and the reason why is because God gave us his son that paid the ultimate price and died on the cross for us, but then he rose again. The temple was being rebuilt again through his resurrection for us. And I think even in today's time, with all the stuff that's going on in Israel and all those countries over there, there's a purpose. Because guess who's coming back again?
Yes.
Jesus Christ is. And it's going to be a glorious time for all the Christians. And I'm looking forward to that day that we're, if we want to call it, that we're rebuilding the temple once again and making it glorious and holy and great, you know. Because sometimes if you really think about it, reading some of the stuff in the Old Testament can kind of be messed with your head a little bit.
It's harsh.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of killing, a lot of rebuilding, a lot of different things that goes on, but it all leads up to Jesus. And I'm so thankful for that. Well, I appreciate you being here. On the next one, we're going to discuss, as you call it, Nehemiah. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. If you'd like to write to us, you can write to us at www.journey2positivechoices.com. That's journey, the number 2, positivechoices.com. If you'd like to help support or donate to our cause, you can go to our website at journeytopositivechoices.com, and there's a QR code that you can scan there. If you'd just like to write to us, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you, and God bless.